She called me Lucky Seven, said my kisses were from heaven. Then I learned she was 11, and I had to go.
When we think of Hollywood in the silent era, we often picture a world of glamour and innocence, far removed from today's celebrity scandals. But is this really the case? In this video, we delve into the truth behind the myths, dispelling common misconceptions about the silent era and uncovering the fascinating, often surprising reality of Hollywood's earliest days. Number 10. The studio heads controlled everything. Unlike today, when stars are often in control of their own careers, Hollywood in the silent era was ruled by studio heads who had almost absolute power over their talent. They could make or break a career on a whim. Take, for example, John Gilbert, one of the highest-grossing stars of the silent era. After angering MGM head Louis B. Mayer, Gilbert's career took a nosedive. Mayer spread rumors about Gilbert's voice when the talkies arrived and cast him in poor-quality films, effectively ruining his career. Another example is the clash between Irving Thalberg, head of production at Universal Studios, and director and actor Erich von Stroheim. Stroheim's lavish, over-budget productions were a thorn in Thalberg's side. After Stroheim's costly failure with Foolish Wives, 1922, Thalberg reined him in, and after a second financial disaster with Merry-Go-Round, 1923, Thalberg fired him. Later, when Stroheim's Greed, 1925, went over budget, Thalberg, now at MGM, cut the film from 10 hours to 2, effectively destroying it. These stories illustrate how studio heads controlled every aspect of a film, from production to the careers of the stars themselves, a practice that continued well into the sound era. Number 9. Early silent films had some heavy subject matter. Silent films weren't always about escapism or romance. Some dealt with controversial and taboo subjects that were groundbreaking for their time. One notable example is Damaged Goods, 1914, about a young couple who contract syphilis. The film caused such an uproar that the New York Times warned that it would add fuel to the flames of vice. Filmmakers such as Lois Weber made entire careers out of exploring social issues, creating thought-provoking films that tackled topics such as drug abuse, Hop, The Devil's Brew, 1916, the death penalty, The People vs. John Doe, 1916, and gender inequality, What Do Men Want, 1917. These films not only entertained but also educated audiences, sparking conversations about serious social issues. Even renowned directors such as Cecil B. DeMille used provocative themes to attract audiences. His last silent film, The Godless Girl, 1928, tackled the controversial issues of reform schools and atheism, causing an uproar among religious communities. These taboo subjects helped cement silent films as more than mere entertainment. They were powerful tools for social commentary. Number 8. The studio system was started by independent filmmakers. Hollywood's modern studio system, dominated by large corporations, actually has its roots in a group of independent filmmakers who challenged the established order of the industry. In the early days of silent film, Thomas Edison's company and other major film companies formed the Motion Picture Patent Company, the Trust, in 1908. This conglomerate controlled film production and distribution, meaning that anyone who wanted to make a film had to get permission and buy equipment from them. At the time, most films were shorts or serials, but feature-length films from Europe were becoming increasingly popular. However, the Trust was against them, and only independent filmmakers could make feature films. Two of these filmmakers, Jesse Lasky and Samuel Goldfish, who later became Samuel Goldwyn, ventured to Flagstaff, Arizona, and then to Hollywood, where they set up a studio in a converted barn. Their first film, The Squaw Man, was almost destroyed when several rolls of film were sabotaged, Many suspected the trust, but the true culprits remain unknown. When the film was finally released, it revolutionized the industry. Laska and Goldwyn's company went on to become Paramount, and many other studios followed suit, making Hollywood the powerhouse it is today, all thanks to these early independent filmmakers who broke free of the trust's grip. Number 7. Silent films were criticized more than most movies today. While many film historians today consider silent films to be some of the most beautiful and artistic expressions of cinema, critics of the time saw them very differently. Silent films were often derided as crude and unrefined. A 1922 article in the English Review harshly dismissed them as a new form of illusion that could not be called art. The critic, Gordon Craig, even described them as, at worst, eye frenzy, and, at best, a headache. The article also took aim at the perceived sexuality in American films, such as The Auction of Souls, 1919, citing scenes of crucified girls and accusing the film industry of promoting bestiality. Craig's critique went further, labeling silent films as appealing to the vulgar, the lazy, and the ignorant, while pretending to serve the public interest. Despite this harsh criticism, silent films would go on to be recognized as a unique and influential art form in the history of cinema. Number 6. Fan magazines were just as important as they are today. Fan magazines have been an important part of Hollywood since its early days, with Photoplay being the first to appear in 1911. The magazine was an instant success, prompting other publications such as Motion Picture Magazine and Picture Play to follow. In the days before the internet, these magazines were often the only window into the private lives of celebrities, making them more influential than we might realize today. Fan magazines were mainly aimed at women, especially middle-class housewives, and often filled their pages with gossip and personal stories. These publications had the power to shape the careers of stars, sometimes making or breaking them with rumors and scandal. Clara Bow, one of the most successful stars of the silent era, saw her rise and fall linked to the sensational stories published about her in these very magazines. Torn apart by gossip, Bow left the film industry for good after a nervous breakdown, demonstrating the impact fan magazines had on the lives and careers of their subjects. Number 5. Silent Hollywood and the government were very intertwined. Unlike today, when actors and actresses often take on activist roles or hold political office, Hollywood was deeply intertwined with the government during the silent era. During the First World War, Hollywood's influence was recognized by the U.S. government, which saw cinema as a powerful tool for shaping public opinion and rallying support for the war. In the years leading up to the U.S. entry into World War I in 1917, many filmmakers, such as D.W. Griffith, were outspoken pacifists, with films such as Intolerance denouncing the war. But after President Woodrow Wilson met with studio heads in 1916, the tide turned. Griffith, once an outspoken critic of the war, made the pro-war film Hearts of the World in 1917. Studios across the country, including Universal, quickly joined the war effort, producing films that promoted patriotism. Hollywood's relationship with the government was so close that Louis B. Mayer, years before he ran MGM, famously declared that motion pictures were the great intermediary between the public and the government in Washington. During this period, Hollywood stars such as Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and Charlie Chaplin publicly supported the war effort, attending military parades and bond drives that raised millions. This level of cooperation between Hollywood and the government was unprecedented and marked a significant chapter in film history. Number 4. Homosexuality was more or less normal. While society in the 20th century was often repressive towards homosexuality, Hollywood's silent era was more relaxed, at least within the inner circles of the industry. Many of Hollywood's biggest stars were known to be gay among their peers, although they maintained a heterosexual facade for their public image. Ramon Novarro, the star of Ben-Hur, 1925, was adored by fans for his looks and charm, but his sexuality was a well-kept secret in Hollywood. To protect his career, Novarro maintained a strict discretion, a common practice for closeted stars of the time. Studios were indifferent to the sexual orientation of their stars as long as it remained private. However, not all stars adhered to this secrecy. William Haynes, a popular actor in the 1920s, lived openly as a gay man and refused to marry for appearances. As a result, he was fired by MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer. Despite this, Haynes found success as an interior designer and continued to flourish with the support of Hollywood's more progressive circles. Similarly, Greta Garbo, one of Hollywood's most iconic actresses, had relationships with women that were known within the industry but hidden from the public. Garbo's sexuality was shielded by the studios, which maintained her image as a glamorous, enigmatic star. In silent Hollywood, while being openly gay was not widely accepted by the public, the industry itself often allowed stars to live authentically behind closed doors. Number 3. Morality clauses ruled stars' lives. Stars of the silent era often had affairs, but their contracts included morals clauses that could end their careers if their actions became public. These clauses allowed studio bosses to fire stars for adulterous conduct or immoral relations, although the studios usually only cared if the affairs were exposed. Stars were forced to keep their private lives private, as any unapproved relationships could lead to their dismissal and public humiliation. The morality clause also applied to other aspects of their personal lives, such as pregnancies, which were seen as damaging to a star's image. Gloria Swanson, one of the biggest stars of the era, secretly had an abortion to avoid jeopardizing her career, risking her life in the process. Number 2. Adultery, divorce, and sensational headline relationships were common. Divorce was still a rare and taboo concept for most couples in the early 20th century, but it was much more common in Hollywood. Just like today, fan magazines were quick to report every juicy detail of celebrity relationships. One of the most famous marriages of the silent era was that of Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks, two of the biggest stars of their time. They met in 1915 and became romantically involved in 1916, despite both being married to other people. Their affair was subtly hinted at in magazines, and in 1918, Fairbanks' wife, Beth, filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery. After Pickford divorced her husband, the two married in 1920, becoming Hollywood's first super couple, adored by fans until their divorce in 1936. While their relationship remains the most famous, it wasn't the only scandalous one in Hollywood. When the beloved Rudolph Valentino died in 1926, his funeral became a spectacle, especially when Paula Negri, his latest lover, fainted at his coffin and claimed they were engaged. Affairs and broken marriages were often the result of the pressures of stardom, and sometimes the consequences were even harsher for female stars. Many actresses, fearing the impact of an unwanted pregnancy on their careers, underwent dangerous abortions, an unfortunate but common practice in Hollywood, where children were seen as potential career killers. Number 1. Drug use and drug deaths were surprisingly common. Contrary to the belief that silent Hollywood was drug-free, substance abuse was surprisingly common among the stars. Wallace Reed, one of the biggest heartthrobs of the era, was known as the screen's most perfect lover and appeared in over 200 films. But after being seriously injured in a train crash in 1919, Reed turned to morphine to manage his pain. His addiction eventually cost him his career and his life, and he died of a morphine overdose in 1923. aged just 31. Reed was not alone in his battle with drugs. Alma Rubens, a popular silent film actress, battled cocaine addiction for much of her career. Despite her early success, earning $3,000 a week, Rubens's drug use led to her physical and mental decline. She was arrested for cocaine possession in 1931 and later published a sensational memoir to support herself. By the time of her death, shortly afterwards, her health had deteriorated significantly, and she was described on set as having drifting speech and glassy eyes. So, the next time you think of Hollywood in the silent era, remember, it wasn't all as pristine as it seemed. We hope this video sheds some light on the true history behind the legends. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more shocking facts from the past.